because we're consistently expecting you to practice these pieces over and over and over and over, that gap widens. And over time, we've noticed that when that gap widens, joy of playing music decreases because you have to spend so much time technically perfecting a piece. That's the boring part of playing music. That's not fun, you know? Having to find the ways to play the music is not enjoyable. What's enjoyable is making decisions on that piece when you've perfected it.
Welcome to the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey, my guest this week is Patrick Boylan, and man, we have such a fun conversation today. Patrick is part of the founder and creator of MuseFlow, which is a really interesting methodology, a process in order to learn how to play the piano. And before you stop this episode and you think, okay, well, I'm not interested in music, I'm not interested in learning how to play the piano, there is so much gold in this conversation that I want you to be sure to pay attention. Because Patrick, you know, he's had to learn how to be someone who knows how to pitch an idea, someone who is an educator, someone who's a musician himself. We talk about all these different facets, and man, there are so many great parts to this that I think will inspire you and then also give you some practical steps. And that's one of the reasons why I loved that we had this conversation. And sure, we talked about MuseFlow and this ability for you to be able to use this if you do want to learn how to play piano or perhaps come back to it after being away for a long time. But just as we say in this episode, you know, sometimes it's giving people that next step. It's giving people the practical thing to do, not just the inspiration, but say, here's something that you can do to put into motion that can actually start to make a difference. And so regardless of your creative context, I know that this episode will speak to you, and be sure to listen to the end. And you know, Patrick has offered a code for you guys as listeners for 50% off MuseFlow. If you use the code Mike50, it'll be in the show notes as well. So really easy for you to just click and put that code in, and you'll be off in no time. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Patrick Boylan. Well, Patrick, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you know, I love your energy. You know, we're talking a little bit before we got rolling here, and I can tell this is going to be a fun conversation and inspirational, practical, and everything in between. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. It seems like we have a lot in common in wanting to infuse play and fun into people's lives.
Yes, absolutely. So you're a musician, you're, an entrepreneur, business owner, you're an educator, you're a lot of things, right? I think that's probably something that a lot of creatives actually resonate with, because you're never really just the one thing. I mean, unless you're working for somebody else and that's your role and that's it, typically. But even outside of that, people have other interests, other areas that they want to explore and figure out how to make a part of their life, right? So I would love to start with you, if we can kind of dial things back to like even childhood. I'm sure that music is going to be the thing that you reach for as far as like an experience, an early experience where
Yeah.
this is a thing that told you were creative. But is there anything around that maybe, or anything that might be surprising for the listeners to know that this was something, a creative outlet that you went towards that really helped inform you, even some of the things you do today?
Absolutely. Music was the first creative outlet that I found, though. Back in elementary school, I did some theater. My dad, I grew up in the back of a dinner theater watching my dad perform on stage in Chicago with all of his friends. And so that was like my introduction into the creative world. I knew that it could happen. I knew you could do it for a job. My mom worked in news during the day, and my dad raised us during the day. They were still married at the time, and so they switched off. I was sitting at the bar and drinking a Shirley Temple when my mom picked us up and took us home for the evening. And my dad was about to go on stage, and so that's where that's kind of my early childhood before we moved from Chicago to the suburbs around like third grade for me. And then my dad started becoming the theater dad. He did the drama club for our elementary school. And then right in like, I don't know, it was very early on. I don't even remember when, maybe even jump back a little bit before that. I started asking my parents for music lessons because we had a piano. And I asked them, I was like, hey, can I take piano lessons? And they said, Pat, it's a lifelong habit. It's a lifelong journey to learning an instrument. And I'm like, I'm game. I want to do it. It sounds fun. It sounds great. So I started getting into lessons and I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I did not like the traditional way of learning how to play an instrument. You're given a new note or a new rhythm or a new time signature, whatever it may be, a new skill by a teacher. And then they give you one song, or maybe two even, if you're lucky, to practice that specific skill inside of the context of that one song. Okay. You have to practice it to boredom. You have to repeat it over and over and over and over until it's truly ingrained in your mind. And then you have to go back to your teacher, or the teacher comes back to you, and you have to play it for them verbatim, and they stamp approval, or you have to go back and do it again for a whole nother week. And that sort of journey just did not work for my brain. And I know it doesn't work for a lot of people's brains out there. The dropout rate for music is crazy. It's 85% by the end of high school. And you're like, why aren't people continuing to play past high school? And of course, my thought is like, well, it's the education that this is how it's been being taught for thousands and thousands of years, because there's never been another way. Mm-hmm. So what I ended up doing, my teacher retired after 8 years, no fault of my own. He just retired. So I ended up going back to my parents' sheet music after months of just stopping because I was just burned out by it, right? Went back to some sheet music that my parents had, and I opened up the sheet music. And I found like little bits, little phrases, or little motifs that I really kind of was drawn to for some reason, whether I liked the pattern or I liked the melody or I liked how it was played or whatever. And then I just kind of memorized it. I closed the book and then I just started improvising around that phrase, putting that phrase in different musical contexts, transposing it, putting in different keys, time signatures, putting in the right hand, the left hand. And then I was like, that was really fun. And then I feel like I exhausted the whole sort of whatever, like everything that I could put it in. And then I went back to more sheet music and I just found other phrases that I really enjoyed. Cut to like 5 years later, after doing this over and over and over and having so much fun doing it, I realized that I'm recognizing phrases, these core concepts that I was digesting early on. I recognized those in other songs and I was able to play them verbatim. I was able to play them just at first sight. And so that's the process that really taught me how to play piano. Mm-hmm. And now I'm a professional pianist. I play at a piano bar here in Hollywood and got a couple of jazz gigs around LA. So like, I mean, I don't want to say it's like a better way. My opinion, of course, is like it's a better way to learn. And so that's kind of the genesis of this app that I made, MuseFlow. And so I was like, how can I put that way of teaching inside of a process that we can distribute to the world?
Yeah.
And so we can talk about how exactly it does it later. But like that whole like rebelling against the traditional way of teaching into my own way of teaching is like, yeah, that's core to my upbringing.
I absolutely love that, and maybe it's the rebellious artist spirit, but
Right.
there's as you're talking about your experience with learning, I couldn't help but think of my own. And the first memories I have, like my sister, who's 3 years older than me, which I love to remind her about. But she started learning how to play piano. And, I remember, I don't even know where we got a piano from, but we got a piano and it was like in our downstairs. And there was a woman who would come to the house and she would teach my sister piano lessons. She was a neighborhood person. I don't really remember much about this woman other than she was pretty strict and she somehow trained her cats to go on the toilet. And I was like, I don't know why this is a thing, but this is a thing. Right. This is a little backdrop for you. And so she would learn how to play. And I remember like being in the other room and listening and, my sister kind of doing what she needed to do. And then the woman would leave and my sister would be kind of maybe a little frustrated with stuff. And I would come along and I would just start plinking along on some of the keys and just listening for sounds that they made. And I don't remember how old I was. I don't know that I've ever actually talked about this, but there was something about that experience, I think, that was very formative of like, oh, I'm exploring. I like the sounds that are happening. And then later on, I didn't want to learn to play piano. I wanted to learn to play guitar.
Cool.
And it was very much the same thing of like, here's a guy who's like got the, was it Mel Bay book or whatever it was?
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
totally.
Yeah. Mary Had a Little Lamb and you're learning how to plunk along and do your strings. And it was so boring. And it was so just like,
so
I'm like,
tedious.
I want like Van Halen. I know you can't like just jump to that, but I was like, this is what I want to go to. And that whole process that you described of it being very frustrating, of it being very like stiff
by rote, like learning by rote is not fun. Nobody wants that.
Right. Because there's something about it that goes, this is something I'm supposed to do or I have to do, not necessarily something I want to do. Yes. And I think when something's motivated by what you want to do, you're much more invested and you'll figure out a way, even if the path before you doesn't seem right or connect. And I think that's what I love with you talking about your journey and the process that emerged from this. I'm like, yes, that's what we need, more of that.
Yeah. And it's impossible to have done this though, without the technology that we have. That's the cool thing about it is that because the idea that the way that we replicate it is by giving you an infinite amount of sheet music that you play until you get 95% accuracy at the goal tempo, the goal pace. And you have to play 4 phrases of music in a row at 95% accuracy. Ostensibly, you have mastered that new skill, okay? So we give you that new skill in the context of the music that you already know, whether that's 1 note or whether that's 100 notes, whatever it may be. We give you that context, and you can drop yourself in wherever you are, right? Whatever your skill level is. So we give you that new skill in the isolate and then we just let you go. And then you explore that concept in the musical context of what you already know. And then there you go. You've learned it. Now, that's impossible if you don't have an infinite amount of sheet music. So the only way that this new way of learning has been able to be born is through technology. And I think that is actually really interesting to see the kind of back and forth that we've had to do in MuseFlow between like balancing the technology and the creative vision here,
Yeah. It's interesting that sometimes you need the perfect time, if you will, right? For things to come together.
Right.
It sounds like that's the case here.
Yeah. This wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago. And it wouldn't be possible with the type of talent that we've got on our team. We have lead engineers that are working on this thing that have worked in like a lead back-end engineer that is making so much money at his day job. He's so good. And then a full stack engineer, front-end engineer that is, a classically trained pianist. You're like, what? How is this? And also yes, it's timing, but it also has been a lot of luck. We found our technical co-founders. We found them almost out of luck, right? One of them is an old friend of my other creative co-founder, Stephen Gizzi's. from high school. They played in a band together. He plays bass. He's a data scientist. The other one is a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend that we ended up going on a hike with in Malibu one day. And we just told him the whole idea. And he got so obsessed with the idea of like all the databases that would be needed for this. He's our back-end engineer. And the other guy I met over at a background jazz gig that I played over at Maggiano's, the only Maggiano's in the world that has a piano in their bar. I played at for a couple of years. Then I came in one day and he was just sitting there at the piano playing some Chopin. And I'm like, who is this guy? I go up to the regulars and they're like, we don't know. He just comes in some days and just sits down playing. What are you going to do? Kick him off? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go talk to him. He's amazing. He's really good. So I go over there and I talk to him. I'm like, who are you? And he's like, oh, my name is Andrew. You know, I come here sometimes and I play. I live right down the street. I'm like, you want to go back and forth, trade songs? You play a song, I play a song. And we decided to start doing that. He played classical, I played jazz. He played classical, I played jazz. Turns out the dude's a software engineer. He's a full stack front-end software engineer over at a workout app called MetPro. And I showed him, I bought him dinner. I showed him our pitch deck and I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, I would love to be a part of this. So like, you know, with the moment, the zeitgeist that we are right now with the technology that's available for us and the people that we've got involved, it really did feel like luck. But again, like we can't deny the fact that we had the genesis of the idea. We put it out there in the world. We started looking for people. Execution is something that I think a lot of people undervalue. Yeah, you can have an idea, right? But can you execute on that idea? That I think is an important step that a lot of people miss.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're talking about that component of things too, because I think, you know, especially when we're talking about somebody's journey and a process and the story unfolds, it's easy for someone listening to think, oh, well, it just seems like everything falls into place. And, you know, and there's, you know, not that there's not a lot of hard work in it, but also that there's like these elements of luck, but also you needing to have other skill sets of like learning how to pitch, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about that part of the process in this journey of like, okay, you have the idea, you're executing something, right? You're trying to cast vision for that. Like, I'm sure there were moments where there were people who didn't get it, or people who were like, you know what, that's a pass for me, right? Like,
yeah.
How do you navigate that?
There were a few times. Okay, so me and my my creative co-founder, Stephen Gizzi, we've been friends for like a decade and a half, a little bit. And so I brought this idea to him when I had the idea of like, whoa, what if there was a way to teach people how to play music through sight reading, the act of reading music at first sight, right? So I had that idea and I was like, oh, let's replicate how I taught myself how to play piano. Cool. I had this like, okay, great. We'll have an infinite amount of sheet music. Okay, great. And then people that will gamify it a little bit. Great. Okay, cool. So I had this idea and I brought it to Steven, who's a music teacher. He's a piano teacher and he's a composer. And he's like, Pat, no way. I've had the same idea. And he pulls up a bunch of documents on his computer. The guy's a consummate note taker. And he just like pages upon pages upon pages about the literal same idea, just done with like AI. AI would generate the music. AI would be the ability for us to scale, right? Because we can write, which is what we're doing right now. We've written every phrase of music in MuseFlow right now. Okay, we have 26 levels. And we've made them be able to interweave so they all fit together, okay? And we've gradiated them in a complexity scale so that you can go through the curriculum in a seamless way, okay? Going from easy to hard. So we've done all of that work, but AI is what's going to really be able to make us scale, and that's why we have Tucker, who's our data scientist. He's created tons of AI models, and he's in the midst of building our AI models right now. I'm like, wow, great. So we have the genesis of the idea. We have the scalability of this project. Great. So we just start talking about it, right? We record hours and hours and hours of conversation between me and Steven, really flesh out the whole project, right? There's going to be 3 major sections of this. We got the sight reading trainer, the repertoire library, where you apply the skills that you've learned in the sight reading trainer. You apply them to songs that get unlocked. That feature is going to be released in the next week or two. Mm-hmm. And then we have the exercise library, or the theory library, as we call it, where you can dive deeper into subjects or concepts that you are interested in, right? Or exercise certain skills that you need a little bit more exercise in. Anyway, That's the whole macro idea right there, right? So we flesh it out. Great. And we're like, okay, amazing. Now we need money, right? Okay, now we need money. Great. We create a pitch deck for it. Fantastic. And then we bring it to a couple of venture capitalist firms. And we say, okay, cool. Here's a pitch. We're very excited about it. What do you think? And one of them's like, have you guys ever made an app before? And we're like, oh, no. And they're like, okay, you got a great idea here. It's really, really cool, but you've never made anything. We need to see that you can actually create a proof of concept before you can actually get investments from us. Go out there, start making it, and then, come back to us. Maybe a couple of years go by and you actually have a couple customers. Great, come back to us. We'd love to hear how your progress goes. And we're like, okay, cool. So it's a soft no for now, right? Another dude that we went to, he was like in his car. He like, all right, yeah, tell me about your idea. It's like clearly this like fintech bro. And we're like, so how do you want to do it? Do you want it to be like a conversation? Do you want us to just monologue for a while? And he's like, I don't know. You just take it away. Just do it. So we just monologue for like 10 minutes, right? And we just tell him the whole thing. And then at the end of it, he's like, guys, that's the worst pitch I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, no.
You just talked for so long. And I wanted a conversation. And I'm in my head, I'm like, why didn't you tell us that early on? Yeah. And he was like, I don't know, man. Like, this isn't for me. This is not what we do. You got the wrong guy. Best of luck. And he just hangs up. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, so yes, there have been people throughout. There's also been a couple of like people that have been entrenched in the traditional way of teaching that really don't get it. Private teachers that have been teaching the way that they've been teaching for decades upon decades, right? There's also a couple of other like classically trained pianists that just don't understand what we're trying to do here, right? Because it worked for them, because the traditional way of teaching worked for them, right? And we're not trying to capture that audience. We're not trying to engage with them. We're trying to engage with the people that the traditional way failed for. So of course they kind of wouldn't get it. So yeah, there have been some people throughout our journey of building this product that like just didn't really get it. But I will say that the majority of people that we come across and we share this idea with, they really get it. Because a lot of people are like, man, I stopped playing at the end of high school. I just stopped. But I really want to pick it back up again. And I'm like, well, what's stopping you? And they're like, I don't know. I don't have the time. I don't have the, the resources to be able to do it. And I'm like, well, MuseFlow is trying to supplant the moment where you like go home and you want to decompress at the end of a day and you just want to turn on the TV and veg. No, that's the moment that we're trying to capture. And we're trying to give you some dopamine hits during that moment, where you're actually feeling yourself learning. Because I do feel like, later down the road when automation and AI do take over a bunch of jobs, which I think is inevitable, there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of free time. And I think they need that creative stimulation. They need that like I'm continuing to learn and progress. And so we're kind of building it for that sort of future,
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking about trying to help people understand what it is that you're building, your vision, there's an education piece to that too. Not only the education in what it is that you're actually doing in the app itself and the process. And so it's interesting because, people who either see you as a threat or don't understand it. I think there's always going to be those people, no matter what it is that you're building or creating, that just, they're not your people. Yeah. And it's important to keep going to find your people, so that you continue to gather around yourself the people who, in your case too, I mean, you found amazing people to come and work on the thing too. And then people to champion what it is that you're doing, right? The people who are the fans of, because they're using it and they're in there and they're like, oh my gosh, this is making a difference. This is like incredible. This is something that actually I wish I had years and years ago, but it wasn't possible because we just talked about that, right? But I think when you get to that point of people being that excited because they're seeing change. They're seeing transformation. They're seeing results. That's something that is, I think, infectious. Because
Agreed.
when one person starts to experience that, just like you experienced it years ago in your process, you want others to experience that. And so you're giving them the place to do that. That's amazing. Is this only for people who, or let me put it a different way. Is there benefit for someone who doesn't necessarily want to learn how to play piano or learn how to read sheet music in engaging in the app in this process?
You know, we have a couple of users that have already... Here's the thing. I mean, the main mechanism for engaging in flow is the act of learning how to play piano. So I don't know if it's necessarily for anybody but that like doesn't want to learn how to play piano. But we do have some people that have already mastered our curriculum so far. We've built out, again, 26 levels, and we have a whole unit 2, unit 3 that's coming down the road. But right now it's at 26 levels, which is a lot, though. It's 14 notes, it's 4 rhythms, it's 3 time signatures. It's a lot. And you have a lot of technical stuff that you have to do with pivoting around the piano and moving around the piano, right? So it is a lot, but we do have a couple people. We have like 4 people that have mastered the curriculum so far, but they still drop in every day. They still sign in every single day, and they play level 26 for like 30 minutes a day. And I'm like, whoa. And so I like reached out to them and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why? And they're like 2 of the people said, I lower the beats per minute, the tempo. I lower it by 1 BPM so I can't pass the level because you have to be at the goal tempo to pass the level. So they lower it by 1 beat per minute. And they just play the infinitely generated amount of music for 30 minutes a day. Talk about flow. Talk about the ability to just go. Like all outside noise is just drowned out and you're just zoned in on that music for 30 minutes a day. That's huge. That is incredibly relieving and revitalizing, you know? And then the other 2 literally say like, I barely watch TV anymore. I just play MuseFlow. I jump around. Like they jump around. They don't stay at level 26. They jump around and they work out new things, you know, try out new patterns, but they lower the beats per minute by 1 BPM so they can't pass the level. And then they decide when they want to move on, you know? So it's very self-guided in that way. That being said, MuseFlow is for people that want to learn piano, but it's also for people that just want to find flow. And they just want to be able to engage with an activity that is challenging them perfectly, where the challenge meets their skill level. They're in that pocket of flow state. That's what flow state is. That's what they do. And it's just so cool to see the different use cases for this app, you know?
Yeah. As you're describing that, I couldn't help but think about it in terms of a daily practice. Now, practice is not anything that's new in terms of especially practice your instrument, you know, music, but taking a broader look at this and saying it's a creative practice. You know, I ended up doing something similar to this kind of thing where dropping in for, if it was 15 minutes a day, that's all I could manage. But this daily creative habit that I talk about all the time, right? And it's this idea of don't wait for these large blocks of time and don't think that you just have to, that you only have value in something that is seemingly much larger. Because it's those smaller blocks that you keep dropping into and you keep your skills sharp and you keep engaged in this process. That's what helps you access things when you're not in that zone and you're someplace else and you need to create either quicker or you need to reach for things that would be maybe dormant because it's been a month since I last did this. It's been, you know, whatever, a year. And so being nimble, being able to get in there and keep things fresh and interesting for yourself so that when you're doing something, quote, important, you can reach for these things and then you're actually able to engage and make something much, I think, quicker and much more aligned because you're familiar with what's happening, right? I mean, so I just think that's an amazing thing, just even on that level of get in there, you know, like you said, somebody spending 30 minutes, even if they don't necessarily, quote, need to, it's something that helps them stay in that place and then stay in flow.
what is Taylor Swift says something really cool where she's like, okay, I write every day. I write music every day. I write lyrics. I come up with melodies every single day so that when I get to a place where I actually have to write an album or I want to write an album, that I can drop into writing so much quicker. Paul McCartney also talks about this too. He talks about a river underneath the fabric of reality, where that's the creative river, right? And he wants to create his ability to tap into that river. He wants to make that faster so that he doesn't have to drill down every time. He wants to create a well that he can just drop a bucket in and grab some creativity and bring it back up. You know, so to exercise your ability to drop into creativity, to exercise that every day is going to be, you know, digging your well, you know, just really emphasizing that journey so that when it comes to these larger projects, you can tackle them at ease, or you can drop into flow much faster. Or you can drop into creativity much faster.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Love it. And this gives somebody a practical place to go, okay, I can get into this, you know, and engage with this process and, you know, let my creative abilities focus in an area where I don't have to recreate the wheel. I don't have to figure out the process necessarily, right? You're giving somebody the on-ramp to this, which I love. Totally. So when somebody sits down, you know, they open up MuseFlow, like what is it that they experience from the get-go? Just to paint a little bit more of a picture, if somebody's like interested in this, they're like, okay, you're talking about this stuff, but like give me a little bit of like, what would I experience right as I open this?
Okay, so the opening flow goes like this. You sign up for the app, you get a little welcome letter. You can just bypass that. We're going to throw that away. It's pointless. It's a welcome letter, and it just tells us like, thank you so much for joining MuseFlow. This is what to expect. I'm like, no, we're throwing that away. So, and then you go on in, you sign up for the free trial. It's a 7-day free trial. And we have a discount code for your audience. It's Mike50, which gives you 50% off for life. Right now we're at $7.99 a month, and $69.89 a year. That brings it down to $3.99 a month and like $39.89 a year. Which is really, really, I think that's a great deal for what we've got so far. And again, the repertoire library is going to be added in the next couple of weeks. So you're going to get these two major features of our app for $3.99 a month. I don't know. To me, that's a good deal. So sign up for the free trial. You go to the roadmap. You right now you have to have, and this is a bit of a technical barrier, but of course, I encourage you to make sure you have all the equipment before you try out MuseFlow. Because you literally can't try it out first if you don't have it. You have to have a computer that uses Chrome. You have to have a MIDI capable keyboard that jacks into your computer by just a cable. And then so we're working on an audio recognition algorithm right now. It's actually really, really good. We're just kind of tweaking it. That should be coming out in the next 6 months, I would say. Where all you would have to have is your computer on later down the road, an iPad or a phone, and you just set that on your keyboard, and then it would just be able to hear your keyboard playing. That's our audio recognition. Takes a little bit to work out, but we're doing it, and it's so exciting. So right now you have to have a MIDI keyboard and a laptop. You go to our roadmap, you see all the levels 1 through 26. You can click on them to see a little preview of the music that would be in there, and find what works for you. Find where you'd like to drop in, right? You just try a couple different levels. You know, if it's too easy, then it's too easy. If it's too hard, it's too hard. Find something right in the middle, the Goldilocks zone of difficulty. That's, again, where flow state is engaged, right? We do have a lot of completionists that use MuseFlow right now, so they want to start at level 1. And they want to clear all the levels before they get to, you know. So they find where their challenge meets the skill set by just going through the whole thing. Go through a little tutorial that we've got. There's some slides that show you what you're going to be learning in that level. And then practice a couple different phrases, and then you get right on into the level. And 2 lines of music will show up on screen. And you start playing the first one, and then, you know, you press play. You get a bar of count in 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you start playing, and you just go. You see the accuracy up in the right-hand corner. The tempo can be adjusted by you up in the top there. Our goal tempo is always going to be 72 beats per minute. If it's too hard, bring it down. Bring it down, baby. If it's too hard, if it's too easy, bring it up, or just go to another level. Once you get to the end of the first line, you go to the second line, you go on through. Once you get to the end of that second line, a new line of music will appear at the top of the first line. It'll regenerate to a new line. Just go right back to the top. You start off that first line again, go back to the second line. Mm-hmm. That's the process. And you have to get 4 phrases in a row at 95% accuracy at the goal tempo to pass each level. We start off in isolation. We start exercising that new skill in isolation. So whether it's a new note or a new rhythm, we start off having you do that first with one hand, usually. And then we bring it in. Each level is broken up by tier. So we've got a first tier is going to be exercising that skill in isolation. And then the second tier or the third tier is going to then put it in further context of what you already know. That's in the curriculum. And that's the process. That's the skill building. That's the process of skill building that we've kind of, created for you.
Yeah. Love it. I love that it sounds very accessible for people, and the fact that people can adjust those things to have it meet them where they're at. Because I think too many times where if you're reaching too far, you get frustrated and you're like, this isn't working. And then you just jettison the whole thing, and likewise, if it's too easy, you're not engaged because you're like, this doesn't feel like it's interesting, And so I love that, you have that ability to kind of lock in where you are.
Totally. And we've learned over the course of like my years of traditional lessons and like talking with other pianists and anecdotal research that we've had with other pianists and other musicians, we've noticed that there's a trend here, is that the traditional way of teaching focuses on, there are 2 thresholds in music and music performance. One is your ability to play at first sight. Like, how difficult can the piece be that you can play at first sight? No practice, nothing. Music is dropped right in front of you. Can you play it at first sight? Great. That's one threshold. Okay. The other threshold is, what can you play with an indefinite amount of practice? Okay. With traditional lessons, we focus on that top one so much that the gap widens. We give you pieces that keep exercising your ability to practice. We keep giving you pieces that raise that top threshold and never focuses on that bottom threshold, right? Because we're consistently expecting you to practice these pieces over and over and over and over, that gap widens.
Yeah.
And over time, we've noticed that when that gap widens, joy of playing music decreases. Because you have to spend so much time technically perfecting a piece. That's the boring part of playing music.
Right.
That's not fun, Having to find the ways to play the music is not enjoyable. What's enjoyable is making decisions on that piece when you've perfected it, okay? So if we can get you from a place of seeing the music to perfecting the piece technically faster, joy increases, because then you're making decisions on crescendos, decrescendos. Do you want to play this very, staccato, da, 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 or do you want to play it legato, da, 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 right? How do you want to play this is such a key part of the human element of music that we've totally forgot about that for some reason. That's what we want to get you to faster, And so, that I find that to be very interesting that, traditional lessons focus on that, but we're focusing on the bottom one.
Yeah. So good. Obviously, so much of this is, as we said, invested in technology and you being able to add in these different parts that you say, are coming. Along the same lines, is there anything that you can think of that you're like, this is something that I would love to be doing or be involved with, or a certain project I'd like to do? And it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to MuseFlow, but just you as an individual, you're like, hey, here's a ground that I have not taken yet that I would love to take. And what would that look like?
I don't know. I do think that I'm an actor. I'm a musician. I narrate audiobooks on occasion. Like I do a bunch of creative endeavors, and then of course MuseFlow. I miss the stage. I miss getting on stage and entertaining thousands. I'm stuck, COVID kind of changed my creative habits. I moved indoors a lot. I used to do a lot more TV and film. Now I mostly focus on audiobooks and MuseFlow. I miss acting a lot. And so I'd like to do a play. I'd like to do a musical, mostly a play though. And I'd like to do some more movies. I miss that. That to me is the main place where I find flow is, I've got the script. Speaking of technically proficient, right? I've memorized it. It's already in my head. It's so in my body. I've just forgot about it. And then it's the engaging with somebody else. It's the talking. It's the telling a story. I miss doing it with people. I miss collaborating in that environment, getting direction from the director and just doing it. That's really where my flow is found. Yeah. I can find it in audiobooks. I can find it in building the app. Absolutely. But that's so collaboration in the app is it's very specific and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. But the collaboration on a set or on a stage is completely different. And that's what I miss,
Yeah. Well, I hope that you have more opportunities that come for that and that you get to feed that part of you too. Because,
Thanks.
When we're talking about, just being a creative person and having these different outlets, I know even looking at my own life, I've had certain seasons where some things have come to the foreground and others have come to the background, almost seemingly disappear, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's not still a part of you. It doesn't mean that there's not the interest or engagement. It just means that it's a different season. And so I think, the trick is, I think, at least from what I found, is remaining very open-handed with these things and going I want to show up and do the best that I can do today with what I'm given and what opportunities come and stay engaged and keep following the breadcrumbs, right?
Love that. I couldn't agree more. And thank you for that. I needed that reminder.
Yeah.
I really needed to it's not that I've forgotten it. It's not that it's lost. It's just things come to the foreground, things go to the background, and it's a season, Yeah. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the funny thing is sometimes the thing that we're working on today can actually help fuel the thing that we're going to do tomorrow. And so for you being involved with MuseFlow and building this up, and I'm sure learning some other skill sets that you're having to practice and lean into and get a hold of. And then also financially, right? Having some things start to change on that way. It can help you and set you up for a different tomorrow so that you have the ability to be able to take advantage of an opportunity when it comes, because you've taken care of some other parameters now that are no longer a worry, right? No longer concern in the mix. I hope that that's the case for you. And certainly if there's anybody listening who can, help you out with some opportunities or anything else, by all means,
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the great things about creativity, I think, is the fact that there's so many possibilities, right? What would you want to see someone who's engaging with, MuseFlow and they're going, hey, I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to get involved with this, method and this process. What would you hope that they ultimately walk away with as their aha moment or their just, their prize, so to speak?
I think the biggest thing that I'm excited to be able to give to people, and we're seeing it with our early adopters, is just self-development and finding flow and a relief from their lives and an ability to engage with creativity in a different way. Honestly, that's the biggest thing that I can ask for. The long-term vision is to revolutionize music education from the ground up, right? Is to create a whole new step before learning pieces of music. And I see how AI, we have the vision of how AI can be involved in that and everything like that, but it's not like that's not going to be the main focus of this app, right? It's we're using it as a tool to give you the tool, right? So to learn how to improve your ability to drop into flow and learn how to play an instrument in a different way that's more engaging, more fun, more gratifying, right? That's the biggest thing that we want to give to people. again, we can see it revolutionizing education for, later down the road, where we started including this in institutions, and we start creating the pedagogy that universities and high schools can actually adopt, all that good stuff. But for right now, it's the self-development sort of thing. It's, you personally want to grow and learn something new, and we want to engage with you in a process that is really fun. Learning something new, I don't know, for some reason, our entire lives, it's been framed as something that's been very difficult, and discipline is necessary for it, right?
Yeah.
But we don't see it that way. We think learning can be so fun. We've tried to do this with edutainment, right? Mm-hmm. Adam Ruins Everything is a great example. Like, the dude's amazing. He created a TV show that you can learn so much from, but it's so funny and it's so engaging, but that's entertainment, right? We're kind of doing edutainment in a way that is like personalized. It's personal self-development, and you're learning a new skill, right? Mm-hmm. It's very isolated. It's very personal. It's very flow inducing. It's not entertainment necessarily, though it can be very entertaining. Anyway, that's the biggest thing for me,
Yeah. And that's the place I think where change really happens, is in a personalized way, where they're like, this really made an impact on my life. We all have those stories. We all have those people or those moments in life where we trace back to and go, this is where things started to change for me.
Right.
This was a catalyst moment. And to think this could be somebody's catalyst moment when they're in there learning, engaging, and something unlocks in them. And it's not about the program or the methodology. It's about them being able to access something all of a sudden inside themselves that then propels them forward to maybe go on and do something really great that continues the ripple effect, right? That totally. They write songs that move people and change, culture and whatever that looks like for somebody. It can be sometimes traced back to that moment when they finally had something unlocked. And that's what I love about this. I love that you've created this tool that's practical, but that underneath all that is really this opportunity for transformation. So kudos.
Thanks, man. One of the coolest things that I kind of recognize within myself is that failure is pointless. Like, failure doesn't really matter in this circumstance, right? Because I think we need to reframe failure in a way that is like, okay, every note that you miss is an opportunity to grow. Naturally, we always think that. But in reality, like, let's put that into practice. Let's let those failures roll off our back, and you just got to keep going. You just got to keep barreling on through, right? Note by note, just continually messing up and just continuously keep going. Keep breathing, keep engaging with your body and engaged with the music, where failure, you might get like 40% wrong. You might get 60% wrong. It doesn't matter. Just keep going, right? I'm playing at my piano bar. I'm constantly messing up. Mm-hmm. Constantly messing up. I am not perfect in any possible way, but if I'm not engaged, I'm very much engaging with the audience, and I'm still very entertaining for them, right? I'm still telling a story through these songs. And this is how I ended up learning. This is how I taught myself how to play piano, right? Cut to, a couple weeks ago, we saw one of our engineers, Stephen Staley. He has never been able to learn. He never learned how to play piano when he was a kid. He's only learned through MuseFlow. Okay. He's at level 18 right now. And we're just so excited for him, right? Never touched a keyboard before MuseFlow. Anyway, we saw him play a song that he had never seen before that got unlocked at level 18. We saw a piece that got unlocked, and we were like, he's just like, let me try this one. And he just starts playing, and he just starts going, and he's continuously messing up. And by the end of this, and all of us were like, oh, yes, you got this. Don't stop. In our heads, we were like, don't stop, because like so many kids these days, when they come across any moment of failure, any little bit of pushback, they get freaked out and they stop. They clam up, right? But I think one of the coolest things that MuseFlow is doing, the dude, Stephen Staley, he got 40% wrong on that first pass. 40% wrong. He didn't care one single bit. Yeah. He didn't care. And I love that. Like, that is something that MuseFlow is absolutely teaching people, is that the ability to just persevere through failure and let it just roll off your back. It doesn't matter, you know? If you're just making these little incremental steps forward, that's really what matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. I mean, I could not agree anymore. And even the fact of like, the more often you're in something, the more you can pass through failure quicker because it doesn't matter. It's, for me, it was like, okay, every day I know I'm going to get up and do something new and something different. So if I did something yesterday and I felt like it was a failure or like it went sideways somehow, it's okay. Because today I have a new opportunity to do something new and fresh. And so,
love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you so much for our time today, Patrick, and the opportunity for people to jump in and to go. It's museflow.ai, correct? That's the website. And use the code Mike50 for your discount. And man, I can't wait to hear how people are engaging. And I feel like, I'm having this conversation with you and we're going to like fast forward a little bit. And I think this thing's going to blow up. I think people are going to be like so amazed by what happens in them as a result of this. And so all the best.
Thanks, dude. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. So great conversation. Love
yes,
it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.